On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, the Avs top prospect, Calum Richie, we were all hoping would just take the bull by the horns and just be there all season. Not going to happen. Gets sent back to the OHL. What's that mean for the roster as it is? Let's talk about that and a lot more on today's episode of Locked On Avalanche.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli, with me as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. And make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOP_Avalanche on Twitter, X, Locked On Avalanche, Instagram, and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live, and make sure you are subscribed to our subtext. Link to that's in the show notes below. When you do, chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. We get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. We'll get to that a little bit later. We'll take a look at the Central as it stands right now, early in the year, but there's some craziness going on in the Central. It's good stuff.
It'll adjust itself.
Everything will work itself out. Don't worry. At least we hope so. But where we're going to start is, like we said in the opening, Calum Richie gets sent back to the OHL. And if you're unfamiliar with the rules of the NHL, where he goes back to the OHL, that is a league you cannot take a guy back and forth. It's not like the AHL, where that's your minor league team and you can bring them up and down if you need to do that. He's not a part of that. So once he still gets those 9 games, and he only made it 7. So the Avalanche figured we don't really need to see any more. Not ready yet, and sent him back to the OHL. He plays with the Oshawa Generals there, and that's it. Like, cannot bring him back. So maybe a bit too early. I think we were all hoping he'd be that guy, that one prospect that you see just fits in and just takes off. Didn't happen. That's okay. He's still 19 years old, still is expected to be a big part of this team for their future, but maybe just a little bit too much expectations too early. And that's okay too. You gave him a shot, and it kind of worked out where he could have been that guy if he was, because of all the injuries that the Avalanche have had, the Valnichuskin situation. There was roster spots for guys like him. And you just tell it's a little bit too early. So they send him back. That's where he's going to be the rest of the year. And you try this again next year.
Yeah, it's really interesting that the Avs would make this call early, like 7 games. And even in that Seattle game, he saw the ice, I think, for 9 shifts. He didn't reach 10 minutes at all. Like, it was about 7 or 8 minutes. So I feel like the idea of sending him down was kind of on the front of their minds in that Seattle game, and they just didn't see any improvement or pep, and they said, okay, that's cool. We've got about what we're going to get out of you this year. Thanks for camp. Thanks for preseason. Thanks for everything. We'll see you next year.
Yeah, only 9 shifts in that game, 6 minutes and 45 seconds against Seattle. His shots for, or the Corsi for him in that game was 1. While the Corsi against was 16, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So, that's not a good look. And I think Bednar noticed that and really cut his minutes in the second and into the third. So when that happens, I guess you can kind of see the writing on the wall, coupled with expecting some guys to start returning. We're at that point, maybe within the next week or so on, at least for Lehkonen, maybe Gabe. We still have no idea when that could happen, but a couple of weeks from now, going to be welcoming Nichushkin back. So guys are going to start coming back. And it is interesting. It is interesting. They just didn't give him the last 2 games just to get another 2 games under his belt. But like we were saying with Eustace, or just the goalie situation, we're not in that world. Like, we're not in the world of just, okay, it'd be nice to get him more opportunity, but the Avs got to win games. And if they feel like the best team they can put out there is without him right now, then that's what they have to do. And that's no slight on him. It's just you're young and you'll get there. We gave you 7 games, and the way that it started was good.
Yeah.
And I say the way that it started going back to the preseason. It looked good in the preseason. Eliminate that slick move that he had. That was awesome. Outside of that, he looked good. He looked good, and he started off the regular season pretty good, and he got that goal early on, and then it was just like, literally, man, once he got that goal, it was like you never heard from him again, which is just the odd thing, because that you would think that he got that goal so early would just kind of like get those juices going, like, hey, I can hang with these guys. And he just was out there. Like, again, he was one of those guys that was never – you didn't really blame him, I didn't feel, for any goal, but you didn't really credit him for any goals that the Avs got either. And that's indicative of the total points he had, which was 1 in that singular goal. No assist for him.
And and Bednar and the coaching staff, they really focus on numbers and this Avalanche way, and it's based off numbers and analytics. And when you talked about that Corsi, the Avs had that in mind. And a lot of times when they make these moves that you're like, the Avs bring in somebody, you're scratching your head, you're like, what does this mean? It's because they crunch the numbers and they look at it and it fits what the Avalanche are trying to do. And you see that with how people perform. And in that Seattle game, you're watching what Callum could do, and then you're telling Kivi Ranta, be quiet. We want to see what our depth could possibly do. And he's exploding. He's having a great year. And then you're watching Callum like not really take a step up and kind of just hovering and getting stale. And then you have, I mean, they could have took it out to the full, 9-10 games and really ride it, but they can't. And it's not getting better. Let the depth, it's showing out. Ride with what you got.
Mm-hmm.
Try it again next year. And I respect the Avs for not letting this drag out, because they already knew really going into Seattle what the outcome was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, you're really dragging out another 2 games, but they, like I said, just felt like we don't really need to do that. And they gave him opportunity, save for this Seattle game. He got some opportunity. I think he was on power play 2 a couple times, like for a few times. So not that the power play 2 has been really getting any time at all. Like the number 1 power play unit has been out there for, a minute 30, sometimes even a minute 40. And the second unit's getting seconds. They're just getting table scraps. So you can't really go off of that, but it was, I don't want to say to be expected because of the way that he started in the preseason. Just would have been, you want one of those guys to be on your team that just boom, just goes.
Yeah.
Just wasn't meant to be right now. And that's fine. So we'll see what he does for the rest of this year with the Generals. And like we said, try it again next preseason. We'll see what we got there. Go ahead. What do you got?
No, and it's something to look forward to. It's something that, like, the chapter's closed on this season. He's gone back to the OHL, and then next year it's something that he also can learn from.
Sure.
He's had Avalanche experience, so you expect him to really take a step up in the OHL and really shine and refine everything that he's learned, and come back to the Avalanche next year with a completely different approach.
Yep. As far as this game with the Kraken, we always do a morning leftovers and kind of just things that are kind of still sticking with us from the most recent game. Obviously, that's with Seattle. Anything that is for you?
Yeah, this is a fun one. After the San Jose game and the conga line going to the penalty box, the Avalanche were 2 minutes away from a clean sheet penalty-less game. Kivi Ranta ruined that. That was the one and only penalty for the Colorado Avalanche in that Seattle game with 2 minutes to go in that game.
Come on, Kivi. Come on, man.
I can't remember the last time the Avalanche had a game without a penalty. So we came that close.
The Islanders game, it seemed like they went a long time without a penalty in that game. And maybe I want to say the first 2 periods, no penalties were called. And maybe in the third they got one, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean, he's got to know that. He's got to know that we got to go a game with no penalties, which would have been nice. But that is interesting.
It's interesting, and like going back for leftovers. watching the game again, looking at a lot of the stats, and we're about to talk about him. Eustace is putting up really, really good numbers, and going back and watching those goals and a lot of his saves, I'm really, really liking what I'm seeing from his fundamentals.
We'll get to Eustace in a second, but the thing that stuck with me is it really does seem like the Avs are starting to stick to their game and stick to their game plan, stick to how they play. And you saw that a lot. Like we see it all the time with a Jared Bednar coach team. It was like, this is our system. We play it no matter who our opponent is. Some people don't like that, but because they feel like you should, kind of change to who you're playing, not fully, but adjust. But I think the adjustments come for the Avalanche if what they do originally is not working. And I think this was the first game where you really saw that. In the first period, it was mostly Seattle. So what the Avalanche typically like to do wasn't working. I don't know if it was a combination of just had to get their legs, get into the flow of the game, coupled with, okay, you got into the first intermission. Here's some changes that we need to make, just a few things here and there. But overall, they stick to their game plan. That's how the Colorado Avalanche play, whether you like it or not. And this was kind of the first game where you really saw them sticking to their game plan and it working to their advantage, like it does most of the time. Like if they can stick to it, they usually are in either control of the game or in the mix of the game. And rarely do they get blown out like they did early in the year, where you kind of have to abandon your game plan because you're so far down in the game. You got to really play outside of your typical scheme. But with this, and the game against the Ducks where they got down, you're not so far down where you have to just abandon everything. You just stick to it. You play to your strengths, and you're starting to see winning results. I kind of am now feeling like the Avalanche that's their game plan, game in and game out. We play our game, force you to beat how we play our game. And if you can do that, congratulations, because we'll take our chances with our way beating out your way more often than not. So I really kind of feel like the Avs are starting to come around to, and a lot of that rides on how the defense is playing and how the goaltender is playing. So I'm feeling good about how the Avs are like kind of imposing their will, imposing how their style of play on their opponent.
Yeah, I like it, and you're seeing the team buy into who's they're playing with. It doesn't matter who's sliding up or down, because you saw Miles Wood jumping up and down lines, and it's very positive, and I like to see the team buying in from where the first couple games it felt like everybody was completely lost.
Yeah, it did. And that's the beginning of a season. It's the beginning of a hockey season. So you mentioned Eustace. Bednar had some comments on him. Let's talk about that right after our first break, coming up right now. First, we're going to hear from FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return over at FanDuel, which is, of course, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is $200 in bonus bets guaranteed in your account. All you got to do is place a $5 bet, and that $200 bonus bets is yours. So go over to FanDuel.com right now. Get started. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Goalie continues to be a hot topic in Avalanche land, and it's all Eustace right now. He is kind of the man in command right now for the Avs, and we were talking about yesterday, kind of looking forward to the game Thursday against Utah. Who's it going to be? Kind of the same question we had with who's it going to be for Seattle. Obviously, that game has come and gone. We know what the answer was to that. So we had the question after the Seattle game in yesterday's episode, who's it going to be for Utah? I think Bednar has given us his answer. He is going to ride the hot hand, and I'm glad he is. And I said it in yesterday's episode. I kind of alluded to it in the first segment here. I was like, he's not in the business of coddling anybody. We're in the business of winning games. And right now he feels why bench a guy who's giving you 2 good starts? you can make the argument that those starts are against, subpar teams, and that's fine, but that doesn't tell the entirety of the story. He's looked good. And like I said before, you're still facing NHL caliber shots, and he's stopping them. So yeah, I think he earned the second start. And I think he has earned this start against Utah. And the whole thing with Kakkonen, you deal with that when you need to deal with it. You don't force it and force him in just because, especially when you have a goaltender who's giving you two good games back to back.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Bednar. You ride the hot hand until it levels off, or because the next guy would have to be Kakkonen. Like, it's Georgie, let him take a vacation. It's
yeah, you were saying that yesterday. I don't want to phrase it as like, hey man, you're on the back burner for the foreseeable future. Like, you're on the back burner right now for this next game. But like with Kakkonen, like, we still got to remember, people, he was a waiver pickup. This is not a guy who was in your system forever. There's a reason why he was on the waiver wire. So I'm not going to slide Eustace into the first spot for the rest of the year and then Kakkonen and his backup the rest of the year. That's just going way too far, way too quick. That's why I want to do it like day by day. And right now, it's Eustace as your starter. Backup is in the air, if you ask me.
And I'll just say, Eustace right now, he has seen 4 games of action. He has given up 7 goals. Georgie has seen 5 and has given up 20. I'm not making
say it out loud. It just makes it just boggles the mind.
And Eustace would have better stats. He had 1 game in relief for Georgie, where he came in, saw 4 shots, let up 2 goals, gave him a .500 save percentage in that game. That has brought his save percentage down. But since then, like, his worst performance would be second for Georgie's save percentage so far this year. So yeah, even though Kakkonen was a waiver pickup, his numbers weren't terrible. They were bouncing around what Georgie can give you now, but it's a new fresh face who wants to prove himself somewhere new. And you have the benefit of the Avalanche defense and forwards to bail you out. And I like how I mentioned it yesterday, how the Avs are playing in front of Eustace, because they don't have to go into the Avalanche, quote unquote. They're so good at playing from behind. It's because the goalie situation is different and there's a confidence. Cale Makar talked about how confident that he plays, and the saves that he made were huge. The team feels that confidence and they can build off that. When your first 4 shots on goal, one of them doesn't go in, that's a nice thing. And the Avs can build off that. And it's Eustace's net. And then we could throw in Kakkonen, but I'm okay with letting Georgie sit for a bit and watch how the goalie position should be played for a little bit.
I mean, if Eustace just keeps doing this and you get more and more confidence in him, I think the confidence will come in the just playing more games and how he does in those games and the caliber of opponent. So right now Utah is a little bit, they're a good team right now, better than they have been the past number of years. So this is I think another good kind of test for him. And I think as far as Georgie goes, seeing the Red Wings waive Ville Husso kind of made me feel like, okay, like anything is possible here.
Mm-hmm.
So if a guy is not performing, how many chances are you going to give him? So if Eustace can keep doing this and you let Kakkonen in there and you're happy with, hey, okay, we can use that as a backup role. The Avs would love $3.5 million to come off their cap right now. And they might have to with Landeskog coming back, with Nichushkin coming back. So I think you might be right with this whole Georgie taking a long extended seat right here to see what you have in these two guys that are really low value numbers, and not waiving Georgiev, flat out trading him for maybe just some draft picks, or if you get some, you get some capital there because you're low on draft picks. So it could happen. And I want to say, like, everything is on the table right now for the Avalanche, but because the opposite could be true. You could put Kakkonen out there and he looks like, okay, this guy maybe is not the right fit for us. So now you can't waive Georgiev. So everything is really on the table right now. And Eustace, he can control what he can control. When he's in the game, he can control that game. Same thing with Kokkonen. When he gets a call, he can go in and control that. And if that's your 1-2 and you're comfortable giving up who you wanted to be your number one goalie this early in the season, that is a long way to go to put your eggs in the basket of, and I love Eustace, how he's playing, but an unproven goalie. It's a risk, but there's also dollars to be considered here. So I think it might be a risk the Avalanche are willing to take if it gets to that conversation and that level.
Well, the unproven goalie thing, I think, doesn't tarnish it as bad when the quality of the proven goalie is what you're getting.
Right.
Exclude the Winnipeg series from this equation. Do you remember what they played against Winnipeg before the season was over last year?
Yeah. Horrible.
That shelling that they took, and a couple games that Georgiev, it was, yes, I know he has the wins. I get it. I wish we delete that stat, honestly, because that's the thing that's saving him right now. If you look at his body of work, and I hear the keyboard warriors going, well, Georgie had this game and this game and this game, but look at the ones you're ignoring, and like the ones that the Avalanche had to go on incredible comebacks to overcome. Like the proven goalie and the quality of starts that you're getting out of him, and it was bad in the preseason, and it was bad to start the season. Like, this is your quality. I don't know what you're expecting a Vezina type come off the bench and get a shutout, but then he'll drop the ball the next game. Like, it's inconsistency, and it plagues the confidence of this team. Eustace, even though he's unproven, what he has proven, I'll take every day of the week.
And, and not to move on from Eustace, but when I was talking about, cap situations for the Avalanche, and that plays a factor in everything that they do, this kind of leads me to the Ross Colton situation, where how he's looked good on that top line, and how we had a conversation earlier, a few weeks ago, leading up into the regular season, of Jonathan Drouin, and how we feel like, hey, if he has a good year, how he's going to price himself out. What Colton is doing is kind of an audition for, I can go play on that top line.
Yep.
And you have him for another year beyond this year at $4 million, which, if you're expecting Drouin to have a good season, he'll make more than that, which I don't know if the Avalanche can afford. So we kind of had that conversation of like, this might be his last year in Colorado too. If it is, you've seen what Colton can do, and the more time he gets on that top line, and if he keeps producing, you're thinking ahead to next year. We don't need to sign anybody to bring in. If we need to, we can bump him up, and that's $4 million. That's not breaking the bank on our top line. So things like that, you still have to take in. I know it's next year, but that's what front offices do. They look at what's going on right now, and they have to look into the future as well. So, and that's brings in the Mikko stuff into play too. So it's fascinating stuff. I love doing this stuff and seeing how it all works out. But that it's maybe a little bit unexpected to have Colton up there now to really play that line. You maybe weren't expecting that, but he's up there and he's taking advantage of it. So if he can continue doing this, you have two guys right now. You have Justus Annunen and you have Ross Colton. Eustace is playing for the now. Colton is on this, he's not going anywhere, but for him, it's position. And where is he going to be in which position for the future and for next year? Great stuff for the, so that's the good part of, kind of navigating this cap world. And some would say cap hell that the Avalanche are living in right now, but you have options. And if these two guys specifically work out in their positions, they answer some questions for you. Yeah. And
the cream rises to the top. And the guys that are on the other side of this conversation, if they're not taking a step up, there's your answer.
Right. So, and as far as this Central Division goes, the start that the Avalanche got off to and what they're doing now, a nice 3-game win streak. Figured why not check in with what's going on in the Central, even though it's early. It's always nice to kind of go around the division and see what's going on. So if it's sustainable for some of these teams. So let's get our last break in. Come back. We'll wrap up the show with the state of the Central Division. We'll do that next. First, we got Game Time, and Game Time has a new feature. You know what it's called. It's called Game Time Picks. That makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. With Game Time Picks, it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. That's not the only thing we love about the Game Time app. A couple other things on there that we love. The all-in pricing. You toggle this feature on, and it shows you the total up front, no surprise fees at checkout. And the seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat right in the app, so you can see exactly what your field of view is going to be like. You get the lowest price guarantee. Your Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Tell them what time it is, Kyle.
It's game time.
And it's time for prize picks as well. Who doesn't love prize picks? It's the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. It puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And when my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Who doesn't like Taco Tuesday, Kyle?
It's what I live for.
Are you a soft taco guy or a hard shell taco?
I'm
guy?
a soft guy.
I'm with you on that, man. Sometimes I like to fold one on top of the other. Have a nice little double-decker taco. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts to select players' projections up to 25% to provide even more value to your lineup. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 off instantly, or excuse me, get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On NHL as your promo code, and you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is over on Prize Picks. Download the app. It's Prize Picks. Run your game. Let's take a look at the Central Division, sir. We know what the Avalanche have done. Started off the year 4 straight losses. They are now winners of 3 straight. And next game is a divisional one that is against the Utah Hockey Club, a team that I've been pretty high on this offseason. Kyle's rolling his eyes because he knows I'm right.
Yeah, clip this.
And hey, they're proving me right so far. Right now they are 4-2-1. They're sitting nicely in the 4th position right now. But I think your eyes go right to the top of they jet to the top of this division. See how I did that? The last remaining undefeated team in the National Hockey League is the Winnipeg Jets at 6-0. 6-0-0 if you want to be technical. When we did our divisional crossover with the other hosts, we did if you caught that episode, the way we did it was the myself and the 3 other hosts from the teams that made the playoffs from last year. So the Jets, Predators, and Stars. We did a crossover to start the season. And the question was asked, of those 4 teams, who is the one most likely to drop out of a playoff spot? Unanimously, including Harrison, the host of Locked On Jets, kind of admitted that they probably would be that team that's on the outside looking in. It's 6 games. We have a long way to go. But when you start off a season 6-0-0 and you're the last unbeaten team remaining, people are going to take notice of that. Is it sustainable? You have an all-world goalie. So how long can this go for?
It'll go for a while. They're going to be up there. This is what they did last year. It is. I mean, we shouldn't be too shocked, but this is what the Jets do. You underestimate that lineup. Connor Hellebuck makes them look great, and they take advantage of everybody underestimating them, and they walk out with 2 points.
I mean, you get starts like this, and that just helps you for a while. Going, you're not fighting with people in the middle of the pack to leapfrog one guy or another, or one team or another. Like the more wins you can just sock away at this point in the game, you're not the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
Fighting to get back into it right now, but there is a long way to go. And you have teams sometimes. A couple of years ago, remember, like the Ducks started out really well, and we were like, okay, when is this gonna kind of fall back down to earth? They eventually did, but it wasn't until like January, end of January. So it gives teams like hope. And hey, while this might not be a year, something to build on for next year. I'm not putting the Jets in the realm of the Ducks where they're that bad. The Jets are a good team, and they could absolutely and probably will fight for a playoff spot. But I don't think anybody really saw a 6-0 start. But they've been on fire.
Yeah, they're a good team. They're a good team. Easily underestimated, but they back it up.
Now, a team right behind them right now, Minnesota Wild. Minnesota, 4-0-2. So, they have overtime losses and regulation overtime, regulation losses. I think that is an Anaheim Ducks team. Like they're playing well. They have good players on that team, but they're a top heavy team. Goalie, I don't know how long that's going to hold up for. I mean, it's doing pretty well right now. But I think that could be the team that eventually will fall back down there.
Yeah, easily. Yeah. And when we start talking about the bottom of the league, how that's not going to stay, Minnesota will get replaced.
I think so. You have Dallas. They're 5-2-0 right now, kind of right where you expect them to be. They're not going to go anywhere. We mentioned Utah in fourth place. I think that's kind of where they hover for a lot of the year. I don't really feel like there's going to be a big drop off with that team. I think people are going to see it in this game on Thursday with the Avalanche. They're kind of an exciting team. Really good defense, although they are giving up more goals than I think they want to right now. But despite that, they got a winning record.
Good for them.
You hate just admitting that Utah has a pretty decent team this year.
They're just the bad news Bears. Like,
yeah. Hey, but the bad news Bears won games.
Yeah.
So after that, you got St. Louis 4-3-0.
That's about to fall out because injuries are starting to plague that team, and they're about to start sinking.
Big injuries. Then there's the Avalanche, who obviously, we know about them. Blackhawks 2-4-1. It's the one team where they are where you expected them to be. Maybe not that the basement of the division, but towards the bottom. So long way to go for them. I think it's going to be another long year for them. But
when we had our crossover, this was pretty much the prediction for where this team would be. So they're as expected.
Yeah, but when you have Bedard, you'll watch their games, right? And then rounding out the division right now, Nashville finally got a win. But we were complaining, rightfully so. The Avalanche lost their first 4 games. Nashville lost their first 5. And for a team that everybody was just heaping the praise on and saying like, oh, they're going to take this division with all those new changes, you're seeing how a lot of changes take time, and they'll get it right. Just how we're saying with the Avalanche turning things around. I think the same will be said for Nashville. But people heaped the praise on them and didn't really let them play games first. I get that because it was an exciting offseason for them. But even though I don't think anybody was really expecting to lose their first 5 games of the season, but they did, and they finally got there. You thought the Avalanche were pressing to get a win. In Nashville, it must have been panic overload.
I don't know if it's finished panic yet. The thing with Nashville, yes, we were talking about, and I put them as like one of the top teams in the Central before the season started.
Yeah.
But then it's one of those that it's a good thing we don't play this game on paper when we play it on ice.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it's starting to remind me, the deeper in the season I have an eye on Nashville, because they're starting to remind me of the Super Lakers when Kobe, Shaq, and they had Karl Malone and Gary Payton.
Yeah.
It's starting to remind me of like, everything on paper, you should award this team a title, but it's just not clicking yet. And I'm watching for that clicking. Like the Avalanche, they got off to a slow start, but they've worked together. They've overcome many things together. This team hasn't yet. And Nashville's still trying to figure that out. So how long it takes them to figure it out is the question. But hey, you got to start putting these wins together now. Colorado is. If Nashville doesn't, with the way the Central is, you're losing time, and you have to start making up ground now.
Well, it's like we're saying with Winnipeg. Like
Yeah.
Just the distance that they're creating between those two teams, it's two different outlooks. Winnipeg is like, hey, we're socking away wins. Nashville's we're socking away losses. So we're constantly playing catch up, where Winnipeg is like, hey, we're playing with house money right now. It's just two different worlds right now. But that's why it's so early in the season. No panic button should be getting smashed, but maybe concern is one of it. Concern on how long is it going to take to turn this around. So we'll see where they go from here. So, all right, that will wrap it up for today. We did get some predictions, I think, for the game against Utah from our subtext crew. I wanted to bring those up real quick here.
I hope nobody played your Utah love and everybody said Avalanche by 50 goals.
Let's see. We got Kyle says all tied up going into OT. Time is ticking down and it's looking like a shootout. Wait, what's that? By God, that's Howler's music. An unlikely hero in the most improbable times. Av claim the victory and cement the rights to the Yeti 4-3. Kyle, that's the best prediction for an Avs game I think I've ever seen.
Kyles are cool.
Kyles are good people. Kyles are really good people. That I love that though. We should beat Utah every single game and say like that Yeti is ours. Katie says, keep my fingers crossed for overtime so everyone gets a point. Oh yeah, she's a Utah fan as well. So, and she says 5-4 Utah since they're at home and just got their first home ice loss. They'll be looking to come back strong for Salt Lake City fans, I think. So I like the honesty there, Katie.
Or they could burst a water main and we can delay this game and play it another day.
Kay says Utah by any other name is still the Coyotes, who are trouble for the Avs. But I think the streak will continue. Juice gets to start again, and it's a 4-3 win. Have you taken that out of your vocabulary that Utah is the Coyotes, or you still connect one to the other?
They have that smell.
Oh man, Brandon says 2-1 overtime. Everybody's going overtime in this game. Crazy. 2-1 overtime loss. The loss is going to be a death by 1,000 cuts. So he thinks it's one of those games where they just can't get their stuff together.
That's what I'm feeling. It's going to be like a 5-3. I don't think it goes to overtime, but it's going to come at a cost.
All right. And Chad says if Juice is in net, I think we win 4-1. Goals by Colton, Rance, Middlestat, and Logan O'Connor. When's Parker Kelly going to get one? Give me a Parker Kelly goal, people.
No, you know what? I'm willing some LOC action. It has gotten ice cold for LOC, and I would like to see him get going.
All right. So if you want to chat with us like those people are, sign up to the subtext. Links in the show notes below. That's going to wrap it up for today, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow. And guess what? You just made it through another 24 hours of Sidney Crosby in an Avalanche sweater. He's going to be in an Avalanche sweater. We hope.
No.